Hi everyone, Holly from Acorn Press. We're excited to welcome back Julie Pellissier-Lush to share her journey with Lanook Ghost Stories of PEI. Julie, your wisdom, your wonderful way and style of storytelling. Can you give us a brief summary about the stories of PEI, even the pronunciation for some of the things, for like any viewers?
I mean, storytelling has always been a big part of my life.
Yeah, of course.
When I was little, I grew up in Lennox Island. We lived in the cultural center. Used to be the priest's house. It was right across from St. Anne's Church, right there in downtown Lennox. Very haunted. Very
Yeah,
lots
of
of
course.
spirits there.
Yeah.
And I think over many nights of hearing the stories of where I lived, it just it just became sort of so much a part of life. And then when my mother passed away when I was 3.5, my father wanted to make sure that I stayed connected to my culture, and he would remember the stories that were told to him, and he would share them with me growing up, so that I felt that connection to nature, that I felt that connection to the spirits. We don't feel the need to say that when somebody passes away that they are gone. A lot of times what I've been learning, and I'm still learning, is that when somebody passes away, like, we don't leave the body alone. We have a group of aunties that come and sit with the person
Yeah,
as they're,
exactly. Yeah, I have a group of those too.
and
With
they do this. They
Winnipeg.
sit with them.
Yeah.
And then the aunties stay with the body even in the funeral home if it's in Charlottetown, or the person's house if it's in Lennox or Abegoit. And then the aunties are done the work that they are set out to do the day that there's the funeral, and we bury the individual.
Yeah, of course.
And after one full year, we have another celebration of welcoming that spirit back as one of our ancestors. So they have a year to go and learn how to
What's
be a
the
good
ceremony called?
ancestor. Mostly a celebration of life. We
Yeah.
put a spirit plate out. We put food that we're enjoying at the feast.
Is
We
that what
put
kind of like this, even the title with Lanook Ghost Stories of PEI, it's like a celebration of life kind of thing?
exactly. It is. It's a celebration of life because they say birth and death should be treated with as much ceremony and joy. And I know a lot of different cultures have a hard time with that because they believe that death is the end, or it is like a huge pause until the end of time, or whatever their cultural or spiritual
Yeah.
or religious belief is. And we all have different ways of seeing it. And I know that for us, we believe that they will be returning to us, and they stay with us, they guide us, they lead us down the path we're supposed to be going if we listen hard enough. They come to us in our dreams to make sure that we can see the path a little bit clearer. And those that are more open and wanting to stay connected will get that help from them.
Yeah,
And it
it's
isn't
really
something you can
interesting.
prove. Like, you
Even
can't
the people who
say,
had,
these are my ancestors here, but it's something that we just all know. So when we talk about ghosts and ghost stories, really we're talking about the people that have gone on before that we still love and we're still connected to. So spirits and ancestors, they're all sort of interconnected, and it allows us to stay connected to them even after they pass. So we grow up with that knowledge that they're there. So it isn't believe or not believe, it's just, or approve or disprove. It's just more or less that's how we were raised to believe. They're there, and they're there for us.
absolutely incredible. With like this gained experience and knowledge, of course, this is reflected within the writing, with the collection. So like, how did you choose which ghost stories to include when you said you have this firsthand experience? Were there anything that stood out particular to you? I definitely enjoyed them all. I had the pleasure to read them on flights. I'm bitten by the travel bug as of recent. So, what about yourself? Like, since you're one of the collectors, of course.
For me, it was because I knew the age group that we were going to be targeting with this, we had to make sure
Hmm.
that they were not the really dark and scary ones too bad. Like enough because children know when
Not
it's
too
enough,
scary.
right? Like children know if you're going, what's a real story? But at the same time, they had to be real. They had to be told by one of our elders or somebody in our community. And these stories had to be able to withstand supervisory people who are going to be deciding where this book goes and where it doesn't go. So it was really
Oh,
some of our stronger ones, like maybe like we are working on book two now, just because
working
there's
on book two now.
yeah,
Oh, well,
we
heck,
have
I
so
don't even
many
know.
stories. There's hundreds and hundreds of stories. And we really just sort of got together and decided which ones were going to be in the very first book. And almost before this even went to print, we had a list of more. And more community members would see the book and say, well, I have some ghost stories. And then you just go and you spend an
Yeah,
afternoon with them and you get like a whole half a book in just one visit. And I don't know if you realize, but we really tried to do a few different cool things with it. We wanted it to be all over PEI. So every story
all
had a
over
different
PEI.
location, right? If you noticed, it wasn't just all Charlottetown or all Lennox Island or all Abequid. It was all over, as much as we could go. And ghost stories that have been around for a long time. So I feel for the very first one of this kind, I thought that a lot of thought, a lot of heart, a lot of dedication, trying to pick the ones that would sort of flow together a little bit better
Yeah, of
too.
course. That's
The
amazing.
Witch of the Woods, the Witch of Fort Lejeune. Like there's so many different stories that are all sort of weaved in, and then of course the ghost in Lennox Island Beach, like all of these different little stories that make you go, hmm.
Yeah,
And especially if they're told to you from a child's memory, a child's perspective, but grown up.
exactly. That's what a lot of people are like able to question and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Shadow. It's wonderful. There's so many, and like that's just not going to change. But at the same time, it's very valuable, like in the best way. Of course, in what way do these ghost stories like reflect the culture and traditions of the Lenape Mi'kmaq people?
Honestly, I think all of our stories all have deeper meanings. We have stories that tell you to believe in yourself. You might not see that
Believe,
from story until somebody says,
of course.
believe in yourself. This story will tell you that even if you feel defeated, even if you feel attacked, even if you are hurt and feel devastated, if you stand up and keep going, you will gain your strength back. So a lot of our stories have either a purpose or a meaning, underlying meaning. We have stories to be good to nature. When we can hunt bear, when we have to look after the water around us. We can't take more than we need of the fish or the lobster. All of these stories have that underlying meaning. And it's the same with ghost stories. And those stories of tragedy and loss are also ways of telling us how we can get through something that's equally as bad or equally as hard or equally as devastating. And the fact that a lot of these people got through it and got to the other side, that in itself is sort of an inspiration. But also at the end of the day, it is also reminding us that they're still here, they're with us, and they're guiding us. And some of
Yeah,
them,
of course.
there's some of them are tricksters. Some of them want to just teach us some things.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely like hold these different, like maybe even instructions too, and a little bit of a slap on the wrist back. Um, I definitely hold them near to myself because there's always something to learn. So it's, yeah, you just never know, right?
Yeah.
You kind of like touched on the question of whether there's any recurring themes or messages in these ghost stories that you do speak and that you do collect together. There's anything else for like the readers to grasp because there's so many underlying messages, like you said. Thanks for sharing like experiences regarding this
Some of them are also a little bit of history because I think
history, of course.
I can't remember 110%, but I know that there's a lighthouse story around Fort Lejeune, and there is actually people that I bumped into who are related to the people that had this lighthouse. And apparently there was a young lady there, and she fell in love with the Samuel Holland, who came here to PEI to section off the land for the British government. And he failed, I think, to tell her that he was married and had children, and they had a relationship, and she had children with him while he was here because
Yeah.
it was for a length of time. And then when his contract was done and he was ready to go home to his wife and family, he pretty much left a Dear John letter and went back to his wife and children. But everybody in the community then knew that she had been duped and that now she would be left to raise these children on her own. And in the ghost story that I've heard, she got up in the middle of the night. One of the kids, I guess, had woke up. She fed the child and then she walked it onto the ice like she was walking
Yeah.
to meet him and never came back. And so her ghost still haunts the shores there of Fort Lejeune. So it
What
tells
is
you
the
a little bit of
pronunciation again
history.
for Lenoir?
Yeah, Fort Lejeune, Fort
Lejeune.
Amherst,
Fort Amherst,
Amagen, the meeting place.
the meeting place.
It's where everybody would meet. It would be, you'd come into the cove, and that would be, the
Lejoie.
cove would be like the entrance to go to Charlottetown, right?
Hmm.
So it would definitely be the meeting place that would be, you look across, and there's, I think Nova Scotia is right across the way. So people, the boats that would go back and forth, if you were there and you were waiting for somebody to come over,
Yeah.
that would be the meeting place, right?
A bit of like symbolism there with there's definitely a beginning, but there's sometimes in the stories you seem like to catch people off guard, which is really nice. I really like that aspect of storytelling because you are being careful, of course, who the target audience is, which is the younger age. Not too dark because there's a lot of
Can't
standards
make it
you
too.
got to follow. So then authors with you as well, because yeah, like all three of you came together to collaborate on this book. But like how? Tell me about tell us about
Our
your friend
collaboration,
adventure. Yeah, your interventions.
we had been together for so long, and it would start out with when I was working at the Native Council PEI with Tammy, and her mother would come in, and we'd have ghost story nights for the youth, and they'd love it. Like they would all show up, and we'd turn down the lights, and she would start telling these stories of long ago, and everybody would get the shivers and heebie-jeebies, and then we'd send them off to home. And my cousin would come because the three of us are all best friends. So then we started doing paranormal investigations, and then we started Mi'kmaq Paranormal. We go all over PEI, and we're hoping to go beyond at some point. We're
With
looking
your
into,
ghost stories.
exactly, we're looking into going and hopefully getting application into Bell 5 and do a series on the different stories that we have and us like doing the investigations of them. So I think it's a real want to hear
Yeah.
it and see it
Yeah,
and
they're
be a
going
part
on
of
it.
it.
It's definitely it's a real I feel like it's a real form of like authentic entertainment as well. I mean, it's just so darn interesting, right? So like I
And
really
everybody's
yeah.
interested in it. Even if they act like they don't like it, they're still interested.
So then you known each other for like a really long time. So how can you describe like the writing and collection process?
Honestly, we will each go out and find different stories, and then we'll gather and edit them and see where they fit. At first, it would be everybody would email me different stories, different ideas, and then we would have an open doc where we could add things that we thought might be interesting for the book.
Yeah, of course.
And then, of course, at the end, then we put it all together with different geographical areas, different sort of kinds of ghost stories, and then sent it off. And then it went through editing, and then we came back and we had a second and third look at it. And not to say that there isn't a few little boo-boos that all of us in due diligence kind of missed, but I think it's also leads to the charm that no, it's not perfect, and neither is ghost hunting, but at the same time, it's all good.
Like that's amazing because like you're all three of you are all over the world, so then you still create this collection process virtually, which is
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
exactly.
But I really like that about technology. Like we can do this today, like meet virtually face to face. I'm really
It's,
relaxed. That's amazing. Like I said, it's very productive. It's a really nice conversation too, because you never know.
I can't remember, was it Abitibi? No, it was the coal mines. I think we're up there. And
Do
we had
you?
friends, the Pins from Newfoundland. Lots of Newfoundlanders would be up there,
Yeah,
and
of
I'd go out and
course.
visit my husband's family. And it was quite
Okay,
the
yeah.
bumpy ride from Winnipeg. Route 6, I think it is, all the way up. It's like, yeah, my father actually still lives in Pinawa, Manitoba. So,
You know,
right near Lac du Bonny, and yeah, it's like right sort of midway, right on the edge of the White Shell.
regarding that
We're
piece of
generating.
geographic information you give, so you personally experience like, yeah, these supernatural events like described in your wonderful story, your folks' wonderful collection. Is there any one that you can like share with us or
Sure,
segue off
sure.
into one before, like just so I can ask?
This one is a very, very cool one. It was given to us by the late Captain John Josark, and he is making a film with this story as part of it, which is really cool. In lacing the threads of a visual and audio experience, which is cool. And from John Joe's perspective, he says, "This is a story told to me by my daddy when I was little. The man who raised me was Jacob of Lennox Island First Nation. As Indigenous people, we love to share our stories, and it is fun as a child to hear the ones that keep you up at night. One day, Daddy was doing some work on the farm, his chores, things we had to do back then, and he started thinking of when he was a little boy with his father, Chief John T. Sark of Lennox Island as well. The story from my father, Jacob Sark, is here, and in his words. When I was little, my dad built a beautiful fence around our home here in Lennox Island. Times were hard, and it was splurging a little. But Dad wanted a fence. He saved up and got one. It took him quite a bit of time to put it all up, and he was so proud of it. He had a huge smile as he looked at it. That beautiful white picket fence stayed perfect for the whole spring and the summer, and in the fall too. People in the community would compliment him and tell him what a nice fence it was, and that made him happy. But once the cold winds of winter came and people were having a hard time finding or buying enough wood to keep them warm, Dad noticed that every couple days one of those beautiful fence posts would go missing. This made him very angry. He had paid a lot of money for the wood, and it was a lot of hard work to get that fence up. It felt like all this work was just in vain, and by the end of the winter there were not a whole lot of fence posts left standing around his house. And although he questioned everyone in the community, no one would admit to taking those posts. Now, as spring would have it, all the stuff hidden throughout the wintry winter slowly came back to life and sprang up, and that happened in Lennox Island. Children were playing on the shore when they noticed the body of a deceased man laying on the shore, or what was left of him. They ran to their parents and told them what they'd found, and soon the whole community came down to see what was going on. And after thorough inspection, everyone agreed that it was not somebody from our community. As was custom, they let the police know so that they could maybe find out who this poor soul was. But after a short while, it was time to lay him to rest. With no one to collect the body, it was up to Lennox Island to give this man his final resting place. Now, John T. Sark knew that there was something to this, something perfect in all the sadness of a lost life that could help him out with his situation. So he got all the wood he needed for the fence, and in front of the community, they laid that poor soul to rest in a wooden barrel and a nice secure lid, and placed him right on the ground where the new fence was going to go. And to make sure everyone at the funeral knew what he was doing, he yelled out to that poor soul, "I do not know who you are or where you've come from, but I want you to protect my fence posts." The whole community was terrified and looked with wide eyes as the barrow was covered with dirt. The priest made the sign of the cross, and everybody left but John T. Sark, who, with a sly little smile, started putting up his new fence posts just a few days later. No one in the community touched the fence posts when the winter came that year, or any year to follow. As much as they wanted the wood for their fires, they did not want the curse that could come with it. It is said that that fence eventually rotted away, and it was taken back to the earth, and the poor soul who washed ashore many years ago looked after it, even after that fence returned to the ground. Now, years later, when the bank where he was buried started to erode, the barrel started to peek out of the ground, and he had to be reburied in the cemetery. And most people believe that poor soul now looks after the cemetery and all the headstones there.
Wow.
That's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that story. It was it was really funny. I really enjoyed it. There was no doubt about that.
And they would not touch those fence posts.
Of course not. Like, do you keep track of these sales of these stories that you have? Like, how do you find such like great opportunities if you can share to like other young creatives?
For us in our community, it's spending time with our elders. The first time you
Of
visit them
course.
over a beautiful cup of tea or coffee, they'll open up a tiny bit, and the next time you go see them and spend some time with them, they'll open up a little bit more, and pretty soon you'll be able to bring them tobacco wrapped in red and say, "I'm looking for a story about medicine. I'm doing a presentation in a couple weeks. I was just wondering if you had any medicine stories," and you offer them the tobacco. If they accept it, they'll share with you what they know. Once you've built that connection and that trust with each other. So really it is staying connected to your elders, making sure that you listen to the stories while they're here and they're sharing, and they are allowing you to learn a piece of who we were from their memories. So really it's staying connected with who you want your stories to be from. And a lot of times for me, I love getting the stories from the elders because they bring the stories from a long, long time
Exactly.
ago. And some of them were told to their elders when they were young, and so on. And it just sort of carries forward. And it's a beautiful way to do it.
Being connected with the elders, that's absolutely, especially like I mentioned before, the vernacular practice of storytelling and even artifact sharing, but staying connected, is that one of like the biggest things you would take away from the Nook Ghost Stories of PEI?
Yes, definitely.
Of
Stay-
course. Yeah. That's really good
And
because
listen.
I would recommend this story to literally anybody. It's very, oh, it challenges me and it's very accessible at the same time because like I just like a really good ghost story.
Stories are not like teaching. Like you don't go to a class and you don't have to memorize dates. You don't have to memorize. With stories, you just take what you need from them, and
Like
that's
you
that.
take what you need from the stories. That's amazing. Yeah. That's what I really like that phrase.
The parts you don't need, you can just leave it because you don't need to take that part with you. So that's why I think stories are such an amazing way to share who we are as a people in a gentle way, because people who are ready to learn more just have to listen, and the ones who aren't still just listen, but they don't have to take in as much. But the stories will always
You
be
just have
there.
to listen.
Mm.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it, Julie. I appreciate that. That's lovely. There's a lot of, I guess, romanticizing and stigmatizing the grind but people sometimes this helps them halt and see, I guess, their surroundings and experiences.
If we have our history in this format in a book, it can't go too far. It'll always sort of be with us.
Right.
With colonization and everything that happened, a residential school, the 60s scoop, all those things were essentially to take away who we were as a people. And a lot of our stories, our languages, our culture, our tradition, all of those things
Like way
were.
things, yes. Our identity, like a cultural genocide.
My son has just written a book,
Manitoba.
The Way the Creator Made Me, I think it's called. And he talks about being a light-skinned and
Done?
his experience, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Ah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually like helping out with some of the cover about it.
That's my son's book, so it's like
Oh,
he's
it's like
doing the
this
amazing thing,
struggle of not being a visible minority kind of thing.
but yet impacted.
The Nook Ghost Stories of PEI. How many more stories like do you think you're going to have like this? You said you had hundreds found. You've been searching and having these conversations where they're pretty interpersonal and just like natural, like a good old kitchen table conversation like this one there, Julie. I feel like that's a gift someone could have. It comes naturally. It doesn't take a lot of energy. It's like it's your time, yes, but you're enjoying it and also hoping the other person's learning something.
Exactly. Well, they say that there's as many stories as there is pebbles of sand along our beautiful sandy beaches here. So there's a lot.
Even with personal experience, how creative you would get as well with certain ways of telling the story, whether it's by graphics or just pure words or even like poems. Because I had a really good experience, unexpected one, and it's wanting to get out. So to other creatives, when you find and collect these stories, like how can you help others get their feet started when they don't have much, of course, because like prices and tuition's going up and everything. So do you have any wisdom for the youngsters? Wisdom for the students? I don't know.
I would say just
I'm an
keep,
intern, so
yeah, just keep writing. It's a good idea. Even if you write down that idea, you might have time for it later. But if the idea is lost, then the story is gone.
write down all your ideas.
Because
Yeah, of course.
you can always come back to them.
Yeah, of course.
But if you don't read it,
There's it's like a hobby too. Like you said, I think earlier you mentioned about the key of like being consistent and very intentional. So I don't know if you had any like lingering thoughts on that too, because like, based on personal experiences and reflections, but yeah.
well, this is where almost all of from all of us, all of our stories come from, whether it's somebody in our own families that just has that knowledge, or somebody in a different family that's friends with your mother or your grandmother, like you. Keep those connections alive, you keep those connections happening, and just making sure that you dedicate the time to A, make sure your elders are doing okay, and B, just listen to their stories with active listening, and just make sure that, their stories don't get lost.
So their stories don't get lost. That's the truth. With stories like this, these books being published, that's what is such a great value, like spiritually, I guess, in an archival sense as well, because it is established. It's in like it's a book, it's a layout. How did you find Acorn to help you publish these kinds of stories?
They were amazing at
Yeah.
making sure that the edits were all done. It looked good, that it had a cool cover for us, and different legwork, making sure that we had a final read, because we wanted to ensure that our elders had a chance to read their stories before it went into print too. So
Yeah, of course.
Working back and forth, that shared knowledge, sharing of knowledge, knowing, that all that knowledge still belongs to the storyteller, but we're allowed to share them. So yeah, it was very good that way.
It sounds like they were really fun to work with. Were you able to like work with them remotely as you could right now?
No, it's not quite the same, and most of them aren't quite as techy. They require, if they're in Lennox, an hour and a half drive. If they're in Abergwit, 25-minute drive, and Rocky Point, 25 to 30-minute drive, and dedicated time,
For
and
the
usually
drive?
coffee, tea, and maybe some donuts or something sweet to share.
You can share over a meal, a conversation, a thought. Is really lovely. I really love this.
Food is always a good
Going, of
motivator.
course. I just came back from Italy, one of the best places. I gained my appetite back, and I had the pleasure of doing the courses for Bridget Publishing on when I was away too. So it kind of helped hone my writing skills and I guess my thoughts as well. Very more, I guess what I learned, like to be more intentional. Speaking I guess my own experiences and knowledge and wisdom. I really like admire that too. Perhaps it's always like been kind of like what yours is a collection. There's just different things happening, but it all connects to the one thing, and it's, I guess, belief. With my experiences too, like they all connect with something profound in such a story. You're established here, and you went back and forth to make this happen for you, to make it printed.
I'm on my 9 to 5 job right now, but I think
Nine to
everybody's
five.
home.
So you're working in like
I work at our
yourself or like
tribal organization that works
huh?
under 2 First Nations, and it's called Olnoway. We're a rights-based organization, so we work on just like Olnug. The K sounds like a G. It's like Olnug legends, Olnug ghost stories, and
Yeah,
we work here on working on our treaty rights as people, as communities. So this is my 9 to 5. I have my wall of happiness behind me with all my family pictures and everything, and my wall of community things with all the beadwork and ash baskets
beautiful. Yeah,
and all of those things that make you smile, even if it's a rough, long day.
I get it.
Day.
You never
So,
know.
yep.
But it's like it's nice. It's cool that then you can go home whenever you could separate your life and work, but at the same time, you're loving it though. And that's what I'm sensing, like as a fellow creative myself, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what was your schooling like?
Well, I was in elementary and PEI, and then
Hmm.
middle school in Ontario, and then high school in Manitoba, and University of
Yeah.
Manitoba. I went to the
Yeah.
University of Winnipeg and double major in business, human resource management. So I figured I could help people build a business, and if it didn't work, I could ask them how it made them feel. That whole, I was able to learn all
Beautiful.
that. And at the same time, I was always writing. I was always, I always stayed connected with that, and then it all just, when you're working your 9 to 5 and you come home and you still have all this creative energy and you still want to just keep writing, made sure that work was done, but got lots of writing in as well. So then it all came together, which is
Yeah, so it seems like a productive time. Like, how did you do it? Quite the
good.
question.
University. I mean, I think I stopped reading books for a very long time because of university, and then slowly getting back into it again. I can write them. It's hard to read after you do it for like 5 years straight, and eventually you come back around, start reading again.
It seems to help too with organizing your thoughts and such. It doesn't matter how, I guess it depends what kind of story you're building.
Well, I'll preach.
I just want to like thank you for today, just to have a conversation about your book, the collection, the as the faces of one of the collectors of the entire story. Yeah, please, we're gonna keep in touch with email.
You
Um,
stay in
I have a
touch and let me know about your journey because this sounds
thank
amazing.
you. It's been really adventurous. I mean, if you ever see me, like stop, say hello. I'm sure
Definitely.
we're gonna like share some stories one day again. That's the
We
plan.
Thank you
But
so
yeah,
much, Hop.
yeah, Ikosani. It's really nice talking to some fellows.
Aw.
But I'll
Good
be
to
talking to
hear.
you later.
And we will talk again soon. Thank
Yeah,
you,
of course.
Margaret.
I'll email you later. All right.
Definitely.
Ciao,
See
ciao.
you. Bye.
Bye.